Hi, everyone. Welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm your host, Terry LeJoy with Keller Williams Coastal and Lakes and Mountains Realty. My co-host, Sean Sandville with Oak Hill Solutions. And today we have our guest, David Dearborn with St. Mary's Bank. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
So,
always a good time with you.
My first question is always, who are you? What do you do? So tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and then we'll get into some questions.
Absolutely. So in my current role, I'm a business development officer for St. Mary's Bank, which is a credit union that's headquartered out of Manchester, New Hampshire. So namely what I do is I just try to support individuals and business owners within New Hampshire. Specifically, my focus geographically is in the greater Nashua area. So the 4 branches that I support are between Milford, Hudson, and then 2 in Nashua as well. But given that, I'm also all over the place, like networking all over the state, just providing support and driving success for St. Mary's, wherever that is.
So business banker, dig just a little bit deeper into that. Like, what does that encompass? Because for people that don't necessarily know, like I have a good idea of what you do, but for people that don't know what a business banker is, explain that role.
Yeah, that's actually a great question too, because in my experience, stemming from the start of my career in 2011, different organizations have the business development officers doing different things. So I really appreciate that question. So namely, in my role with St. Mary's, I'm really tasked at trying to source and maintain quality relationships with business owners, with a special focus within our cash management suite of solutions. So namely things like payments, collections, fraud mitigation, online digital banking capabilities. And I know it's a little cliche because a lot of people may refer to this, but I do think of myself as like a quarterback. Like I'm liaising between different branches, different departments, working with the marketing team, technology, strategy, trying to interface not only with members, but with the branches and trying to, get people wherever they need to go.
And I'm just going to go back to an experience that we had because I'm a member of St. Mary's. And when I came over to St. Mary's Bank to open accounts, you didn't just say, oh, go to the branch and talk to this person. I actually met with you. And then you stayed with me through the entire process and walked through and explained things and, talk a little bit about that too, because I think people need to understand that that's a piece that's different for you.
Yeah, that's also a great question. If I'm to be able to develop any kind of rapport or relationship with someone, I'm going to see it through from start to finish. And it's not a matter of, sourcing a new relationship and then passing it off to someone else. Like that's not how relationships work. So namely, I'm always there for account opening, any kind of meetings, whether or not that's just an exploratory conversation about banking needs or setting up accounts, applying for loans. I'm working with various departments to kind of make sure that experience is on point with what exactly you need as a member, right? So I appreciate you saying that because namely, it gives you an opportunity to not only have me as the direct person you're working with, but understand the branch employees that you'll be working with in day-to-day banking too.
Yep. And one thing that I found that was very unique and different, and I very much appreciate it, so this is a kudos to you. Once we opened the account, there was a sheet of paper that was just in the folder, right? It was just in with all the other documents that you had signed or e-signed and, everything to do with the account. But then there was a form there that had legit all of my information on it. And you actually told me to pull that out and not leave it in the folder and shred it when I got home. And you're like, protect this. So talk a little bit about that too, because a lot of people don't realize, I'm sure you're not the only bank that has a form like that, but you're the only person who's ever told me to go look for it and protect it.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. Banks and credit unions are highly regulated, as we know, right? There's federal policy, state policy, the regulations in place, company policy. So oftentimes when we open accounts, even myself included, it's a whole stack of papers, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a dry read. There's really great information that's very valuable in there, but realistically, how many customers are going to go home, crack it open and read through everything, right? So completely understand that. So really want to make it an effort to point out things that have sensitive information. So that way you're protecting it and you're not just throwing it in one of your, how many bookcases? 5, you said? So really just to make sure that information is protected. And, in addition to that, not reading through like each one of the legalese, but explaining high level overview. Here's what's important. If you have questions regarding X, Y, and Z, here's where to find it. And of course, at the end of the day, you can always reach me too if you have questions. But appreciate you saying that. We take privacy matters very seriously now more than ever, as I'm sure like everyone is a potential victim of fraud and getting their information intercepted. And with me knowing you as a person as well, you seem like you have all of your ducks in a row and very private and, protect your information and completely respect that. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that because it's important to make sure your information is safe.
It was. High level, what are the services that the bank offers?
Oh, gosh.
And let's start with St. Mary's Bank is not really a bank.
Yes, that's right. So lots to unpack there. I'll try not to talk too much as I'm very well known for doing. So St. Mary's is actually the first credit union in the nation. We have a very strong reputation, namely in the Manchester market. We have about 16 or 17% market share. In Nashua, it's, I think, hovering around 6.5%. So with that said, we were formed in 1908. We have bragging rights as the first credit union ever that we've never changed like the, organization through acquisitions, et cetera. We've been exactly the same since day one. So something we're really proud of. We offer similar products and services that other institutions do. However, it's really the organizational structure and the unique fee waivers and interest rates that we're providing. That's the secret sauce, if you will. The biggest difference, just so you know, I'm coming from a very tenured career working for very large commercial banks. Experiences I really appreciate, but translating that like a bank versus a credit union, the biggest difference is that we're loaning against our deposits organically. We're making very conservative investment decisions, and we're providing a lot of services either steeply discounted or for free.
Right.
The profits that we're getting is ultimately reinvested within our membership and our communities. So the biggest difference is when you're a member, you are the shareholder of the organization, right? Versus having some kind of, large bank that has, issues stock and wants to make sure they're as profitable as possible. That's not in our DNA. That's literally not how we were first started.
Right.
The purpose is to really support individuals and business owners in our community, offer, very great services, but also not gouge people on the price of things that provide such great value. Second part to your question, what is it that we provide? It's more like what we don't provide. I think that the biggest surprise for people is that our business banking services are not only there, they're extremely good. We have a strong reputation, namely in consumer lending, things like vehicle loans, home loans. Fun fact, St. Mary's is actually the lender of my first mortgage as well, back in 2017 as part of a first-time homebuyer program. We could talk about that if you like. But namely, we're kind of off the radar right now, I think, in the business banking space. And I really, truly feel optimistic about that changing and just getting the word out there about how well it can work. So what we're experiencing a lot right now is that we have personal membership who has business bank accounts elsewhere, and then some kind of thing happens and they kind of reevaluate things. And then they say, hey, why not check these guys out? Because, I heard that they offer, business banking solutions. So one of the biggest surprises is also the myriad of commercial lending services that we offer. So we do things like, land loans, construction loans, term loans, vehicle loans, all kinds of, commercial lending products as well to support our members. So getting out there in the community and my role is really just a matter of education and, just trying to demonstrate value and seeing, if we can support new or existing members in different ways they might not have known about before.
Love that. And you do a really good job at that as well.
Thank you. So, it's high praise coming from you.
Can we switch gears a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about, because you and I have had several opportunities to sit down and talk about real estate as well. And so one of the times that we talked was you were looking to help a family member with a property and looking kind of for some creative solutions and things like that. So tell the folks who are watching kind of what that looked like, because on the show, we don't usually get people to come on and kind of talk about being on that seat of what we do. And so I want you to kind of talk about that a little bit, and then I'm sure Sean's going to have some other questions for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. So despite being, in a role right now that supports business owners, my career extends back to when I used to actually do mortgages myself, consumer lending. I was in management. I've done retirement. I've done insurance. I've done a lot of different things. So what really interested me in my banking career to start was the fact that not only can you help people on a day-to-day basis, you can take that practical knowledge and apply it to your own family and friends. And I get really jazzed up about that because, I understand that, buying a home and getting into any kind of real estate investment, it's stressful. Like for the vast majority of people, that's the biggest financial decision you're going to make in your whole life, right?
Yeah.
So if I can provide value to those that aren't as familiar with the process, and whether or not they go forward, with a loan unique to the company I'm working for, at least I'm helping them by, if anything, educating them on some of the, solutions out there, the process, what to prepare for, like what I can do to put them in a position to not only be successful and get that home they want, but also, have confidence in the process. So at minimum, understanding it, it's really not difficult if you understand some key components to it. So I've been able to help, myself, namely when, I was doing my own mortgage. We took advantage of a first-time home buyer program. And namely, the best piece of advice I can offer is be prepared, have a full package ready to go, and bring it to your lender when you're at that point in the conversation. That's actually very congruent to the commercial lending side as well. Oftentimes people piecemeal, here's my tax return, here's a pay stub, here's this, here's that. That actually is oftentimes counterproductive because that way your underwriter and processor is looking at things several times and it's not overly efficient. So key point number one, if you have a whole packet, be prepared and bring that in the very beginning all at once. It will save everybody time and energy. So that's kind of key point number one as far as my own home is concerned. I've also been able to help a friend of mine secure property in the middle of COVID, which, as we know, was a very stressful and competitive time to find real estate. And he was able to secure a property in 2 months.
Nice.
And so maybe that's a bit of luck, but the way in which we were able to do that was to tap into my existing network. I actually am friends with a very other strong real estate agent, but she doesn't extend into Maine, which is where he resides. So when I asked her, I said, hey, who do you know in Maine? I want the best of the best person that you know in this area. And she connected us and he did a fantastic job. So the takeaway there is that if you don't have to be an expert like in your network, know people who are really good and experienced, and they may know people, or maybe it's a friend or family member who have just gone through the process, and then you could kind of gauge how that went, right? There's nothing worse in my mind than someone just going through online and researching it themselves and hoping for the best, right? Like this is a major decision. You want to work with the best people that you know. And if you don't know anyone, that's okay. Like maybe your network does. So ask around. So very proud of that. He was able to secure the property within 2 months. Also what I did for him, I don't know if I told you this, but I have like a 5-page document and it just listed out, here are some key components. Here's what to look for. I mapped out, key metrics. I won't go too far into that. With debt to income, loan to value, they're very simple calculations. But namely what I did was I just said top 3, lenders that I would look for are this one, and this one. And I said, and here's why. And that way he came prepared with the documentation he needed. He had an idea of the lender he wanted to work with, and he already had a realtor in mind as well. That makes a huge difference when you're competing with however many people, in a competitive real estate landscape, not only in New Hampshire, but across the country, like anywhere. So be prepared, work on your credit, get your ducks in a row for documentation, people that you know and want to work with. And that way, when you're ready to go, it's a seamless process for everybody. Last story, also helped my sister. Long story short, I had a concern about qualification regarding her student loan deferments. So what she ran into was she went to a lender and assumed the qualification process looked the same, and it didn't. So there are unique programs that look at certain debt differently and do different calculations. So that's why before anyone does anything, you don't have to rush into an application. Do your research. Ask, try to get some consultation with those that, maybe looking at the application and just say, what are the strengths and weaknesses here? Like, what do you think? Maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's not. But, I would always make sure that you're prepared and really understand the nuances of how the lender is looking at your application. And that applies to residential mortgage, commercial, pretty much anything you do.
Exactly, anything. So I had a great opportunity to meet with you and your wife recently. And you got to see firsthand what my role is with working with someone who's looking to buy a property, whether it's an investment property or it's a single family home. Can you talk about what that experience was like? Hopefully it was all good. I'm hoping it was good. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to be careful because you and I talk a lot.
Yes.
And I'm reluctant to share we spent a couple of hours at my home, when in reality, perhaps that level of thoroughness and let's be honest, distractions in my home are very common as well. So
that appointment didn't take any longer than it does any place else. I like to spend time to learn what's important to you.
Right. Yep.
And that's where the majority of our time was spent, was learning what was important.
Honestly, I'm going to reciprocate, your compliment that you had for me, because I really felt as though you were very thorough, and details that I kind of have taken for granted, that, what kind of floor it is, what kind of, property is it, all the way down to, the little minute details that to me aren't important, but it could be for a lot of people. And I'm sure that you encounter that often as well, is that, oftentimes we make accommodations for what it is we want because we have to, given how competitive it is. So you're like, I'll change the floor, no worries. But knowing what's important to people is the most important thing. And I really think that you hit the nail on the head, with walking through what it is that was really important to us. And so after you had a questionnaire, at the end, you summarized, these are the need to haves, these are the nice to haves, these are, what we don't really care so much about. And so that level of thoroughness is something I really respect and appreciate and resonates with me. Because I want to make sure that I'm accomplishing the goal of, of my customer. I'm basically an emissary, an ambassador of what my customer wants. Correct. And same thing for you, in the real estate agent space. So, just plugging information into a system and hoping that, something matches the property they want. Sure, that might work, but, a more poignant, direct, efficient process is really getting on the same page and having a thorough discussion with a homeowner, so that way you know exactly what to look for.
Right. And we did that. It was pretty in depth. Questions? You've been kind of quiet, so.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some right now.
Well, you haven't been through necessarily a buyer consult with me.
I haven't been through a buyer consult with you. I've been through a selling consult with you.
Yes.
I've never done any sort of business loans, so to speak. Yeah. The only thing I really know is about the residential mortgages because I've done one or two of those.
Right.
So in terms of I guess the only question I would have is for a credit union like St. Mary's, how would that differ between working with somebody like a mortgage broker? Because that's who I went through before, and I've heard that, the benefits to going with them is they can, shop rates from a bunch of different lenders and, they claim to get you the best rates. So what's that experience like versus working with you guys?
That's a really great question. So namely, in both the residential and commercial space, we evaluate certain data points about an application that may or may not be looked at the same way with other lenders. So again, stemming from my experience, when you're in specific types of institutions, if you meet the guidelines, great. If you don't, that's it.
Yeah.
And there's very limited opportunity to move forward with an application if it doesn't meet that regimented standard. So The one thing that I'm really appreciative of, both in the residential and commercial space, is operating in the gray a little bit more, where we can acknowledge certain data points within an application and make informed decisions that make sense. And so, some applications, the credit score is way off and, income and, it won't work, right?
Yeah.
But we recently had an experience, for example, that, the credit score was off 7 points, right? And so at other lenders may say,
nope,
here are the guidelines, that's it, here's the pricing. We're able to work with members like in our team to be able to come up with amicable solutions that perhaps others won't.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I've worked with brokerages before as well.
Yeah.
They definitely have their value. I mean, they have, X amount of lenders that they can shop and make sure the program makes sense for that particular borrower.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I also find that perhaps one works with 30 lenders, but they really only kind of work with like 2 or 3 most often, right? So on the one hand, it's powerful to be able to shop around at different lenders working with one person. But on the other hand, I just trace it back to what your goal is and what the unique program is. So, if you need a VA loan, you're going to work with specific lenders. If you need a first-time home buyers program, certain lenders are going to offer that program and certain ones won't.
Yeah.
Brokerages are actually a great example, at least the ones in my experience. They don't necessarily have first-time home buyer programs or unique programs in place. That's not to say all of them don't, but I'm saying that the devil really is in the details about what your goal is. Maybe it's a limited down payment or your credit score is a certain thing or it's a government program. Your goal will dictate what lender is going to be a good fit. So I love brokerages. I've worked with them, but I'm also not necessarily going straight to them to say like, oh, of course you'll find something.
Yeah.
They may have a myriad of choices in a loan program, but that's a great starting point. Consider what your goals are and find the lender that is able to offer that. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
That's all good. I mean, it just sounds like working with somebody like a St. Mary's, you have more flexibility. It's not black and white. There is room to, live in the gray a little bit and maybe get things done that a brokerage wouldn't, so to speak.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It depends. I'm careful not to have blanket statements across like regional banks do that, commercial banks do this and brokerages do that. This is just stemming from my experience, right? But I would agree with that. I'll also say, that's also very synonymous in the commercial lending side as well, is that there's always a risk-based model when you enter in an application and it's looked at a certain way with that company, right? At St. Mary's, if you happen to apply for a commercial loan, like we're going to look at it. We're going to be able to dig in and make informed decisions that aren't transactions, that are relationship driven.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of institutions say that, but in reality, we want to make sure that we're covering our butts.
Yeah.
Making sure they qualify, that we can get repaid, of course, but our company and offerings aren't designed to make the most profit as possible, right? Yeah. They're designed to support New Hampshireites. And so, we're going to offer solutions and take a look at applications that have amicable goals achieved on both sides.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's just if something doesn't quite line up, there's an automatic no. It sounds like you and your team and everybody over there is really going to look to see, hey, is there another solution? Is there a way that we can make this happen for them? And obviously, if you explore all options and there really isn't a good solution, then you can't lend on that because it's not a good risk for you guys. But it sounds like you're willing to work with people a lot more than other institutions that I've talked to.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. Absolutely. The other component to it is that, of course, we're going to fight to make everything work, but, we're not for everyone, and we understand that. And, especially in Greater Nashua, it's extraordinarily competitive around here and really good bankers and really great institutions, right? But, we have our value for specific individuals and businesses, and it's really on us to educate, the Greater Nashua community and beyond, what that value is and whether or not it works for them. And if it doesn't, I may happen to know someone that actually fits the bill, right? And that best supports the greater Nashua community and beyond as well, is that if I don't have an answer, I'm at least going to point you in the right direction with how to get you where you want to go.
Cool.
I love it.
Me too. So you've done a lot of great stuff. We work together a lot at the chamber, doing different things there and stuff, which is great, which is how we get to really know each other well. And I'm super glad that you came on the show today and took the time, because I know you're busy, but taking the time to come and talk with us and share a little bit about what St. Mary's can do and what makes you a little bit different, because I think you are unique. You're unique, but your bank is unique as well.
Appreciate
and so any parting words that you want to tell people about what you do or anything that you want to share with people?
Honestly, I'm around. You can easily find my information, right? So like whether or not you're looking for information or, you have a unique need, then just reach out. I'm happy to provide whatever information or resources that I have. I really just want to leave everyone with a parting message, is that you don't need to go through difficult decisions alone. And if you don't happen to know an expert, that's okay. Find them.
Yeah.
Don't make that trek by yourself. You don't have to do that, especially for extremely important decisions. So, of course, great ambassador for both of you and all the great work that you do in your experience as well. But, also in other markets and different priorities, different goals people have. If it extends outside your geography, then that's okay. And maybe you happen to know someone, or Sean, yourself as well. So do your research, find your network, find great experience quality partners.
Cool.
They'll help you out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are out of time. So thanks for being on the show. Hopefully we'll have you back again. And that's going to wrap us up for this week. We'll see you all back next week.